AI is here to stay, and it's not going anywhere. But is AI Rosie from the Jetsons or Otto from Wall-E? Is it Vicky from iRobot or C-3PO from Star Wars? Will AI improve our lives until we can ascend beyond the bounds of our mortal existence, or will it enslave us and destroy us like the Terminator from the movie The Terminator? These are questions that are probably a little above our pay grade, but we're probably going to talk about them anyways, even without our conspiracy theory tinfoil hats, even without going into our secret hidden bunkers that are hidden from the government, because we all have them, right?
Obviously.
If you haven't guessed, today we're going to be talking about AI and DMing. But first, let's explain who we are. This is How to Be a Better DM. This is the show designed to help you become the world's best dungeon master in as little time, for as little money, and with as little stress as possible. And I'm Justin Lewis, one of your co-hosts today, here with Tanner Wayland. Go ahead and say hi, Tanner.
Hi.
And together we've been diving into these topics for the last 3+ years, 200 episodes, talking to all sorts of people, right? Improv actor, blacksmith, professional authors, Instagram influencers, all of them and above. And we do this specifically to find the best tips for you. And today is a very timely episode, I think. My father-in-law is diving really deep into AI, and he keeps saying how things are changing so fast and so rapidly. And I think it's going to be relevant to every dungeon master at some point in the future, because this isn't going away. But also, it's going to affect you because it's going to become more prevalent and maybe ubiquitous. And if you stick around till the end of today's episode, we're actually going to do a little bit on how we specifically use AI through the end of the episode. But also after the episode, we're going to do a Patreon-only content, specifically on our opinions. And if you want to stick around to see what happens there, I mean, so do we. So we're going to talk about it and, see what we can see. But before we get to that, I also want to use AI a little bit. We're going to do a new segment called Get to Know Your DM. So Tanner, today we're going to get to know you.
Okay.
Pick a number between 1 and 17.
16.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Ooh. Okay. If you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
Oh man, any skill? Oh buddy, what would it be? You know what? It would be playing instruments. Just
Ooh.
like playing any kind of instrument, honestly. Because there's some people who are like really good at playing multiple instruments because they've learned multiple. That would be sick.
I love it. What's your go-to comfort food?
Pizza.
Pizza. All right. What is the last show or movie you rewatched?
Oh, that would be. Oh man, what's that called? Spirited Away.
Oh, what? That is such a good show. Such good storytelling, honestly.
It is good. My wife did not enjoy it. That's fine. She's to be fair, I feel like for people who aren't used to the weirdness of Studio Ghibli storytelling, then it's a little bit weird. But I love it. That's fine.
Absolutely. Look at me moving screens around. You can't see it, but our YouTube viewers, they'll see it because they'll see the recording. Last one. What is a small thing that makes you smile?
Small thing that makes me smile. I like little animals outside, like little squirrel, sometimes a
Ooh.
little butterfly,
Excellent. Well, for the listener or the viewer, this is a new segment sponsored by Worldsmith. They are one of our sponsors, obviously, and what they do is they provide generators to help you spark up your D&D creativity and possibly get you past some blocks. And if you're interested in signing up for a free trial of theirs, go to sessionzerostudios.com/worldsmith-podcast. But Tanner, what I had you do was give me these answers, and I inputted it into Worldsmith. You chose 16, which is spell. So we created a spell for you based on your likes, the answers you just gave. So this is a level 2 spell in the Conjuration School of Magic, and it takes 1 action to cast. It lasts for 1 minute, range of 60 feet, single target, and
Great.
it is verbal, somatic, and material. You need a slice of pizza to cast this spell.
Well,
It is called.
that's what it was. Okay, I was like, where does the
Yep.
pizza come into this?
Yep. It is called Whimsical Pizzicato. So, tapping into an arcane symphony influenced by whimsical spirits, you summon a tiny orchestra of animated, ethereal musical instruments and playful forest creatures. The summoned entities swarm around a single target, instrument, or small construct within range, imbuing it with a lively spirit. The animated target comes to life, gaining consciousness and performing a spirited dance infused with arcane magic. While animated, it entertains and provides a +2 bonus to all charisma-based skill checks for its audience. If it chooses to attack, it does so with a 1d8 magical damage, chosen randomly between lightning, fire, or cold damage. Dang. Each turn it strikes. Additionally, once per turn, the instrument or construct can produce a random effect based on whimsy, from transforming a nearby object into a temporary pizza for a humorous feast to creating a gentle gust that causes nearby small creatures to giggle and faint with joy. At the spell's conclusion, the target gently floats to the ground, resuming its inanimate form. That is such a delightful spell. That's so fun.
That's insanity, is what that that's a lot going on. I love
I
that.
know, right? What a wonderful thing, and honestly, what an interesting lead-in to a conversation about AI. Um, Tanner, we have a lot of things to talk about today. We have the ethicality and legality. We're kind of going to lump those together. We have best practices. As well, we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of how we do it. So, what strikes your fancy? What do you want to talk about first?
I mean, let's address the elephant in the room, which is people's general thoughts, concerns about using AI. Because I think when people first, when Chat GPT first took the stage, and everyone was like, "Oh my goodness, this is like a real thing that's somewhat developed now." Um, I think a lot of that opened the floodgates to a lot of other issues, specifically like, oh, AI generated art. I think that one's like probably the biggest
Mm-hmm.
issue, because that's the most easy to see. Is like, oh, how could AI learn about art unless it saw some other art, right? It's
Yeah.
not like us humans. We in many ways learned art just from other humans, but like we also developed it, and I mean, the first people learned art from nature. So it's like it's through observation. But AI, it's not like they showed AI a bunch of pictures of outside and we're like, hey, learn how to be an artist. It's like they had to look at other people's art. There are different art styles. If you type in AI, like, give me an impressionist painting, then they're gonna show, I believe Monet was like an impressionist, right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not
like
an artist. You're
I,
talking to the wrong person.
and then like it would show a bunch of art that was definitely made using a lot of that impressionist art, right? Same for any kind of style you throw out, like art deco style paintings, like those are taken from artists, or heavily inspired, quote unquote, by
Mm-hmm.
artists who did that. Now, why do people get excited by AI art? Because Justin and I, we suck at art. I'll speak for myself mostly then,
No,
I
you can
guess.
you can speak for me from the mountaintops.
We all have strengths and weaknesses as DMs, but that's why I appreciate our sponsor, worldsmith.io. If you're not confident making a map quickly, use their map generator. Or maybe you're much better at making new characters than you are creating a new NPC or monster stat block. Don't worry about that either. It has separate generators for each of those. I even made an evil reindeer mini-boss for my holiday-themed campaign. The same is true for items, quests, traps, and more. Whatever you don't feel confident in creating, or whatever you don't have time to create on the fly, you can use worldsmith.io's generators to bring your D&D campaign to the next level, which, as you know, is what our podcast is all about. Check out sessionzerostudios.com/worldsmith-podcast to learn more and support our show. Link is in the description.
And as one of the few people in my family who didn't really take to art, like I feel that lack strongly. So like, frankly, in the past, like in home games, like I've used AI generated stuff to make like a character portrait, and it's been cool. I loved it. I've been like, oh, this is really sick. This is really well done. But of course, it becomes a whole issue when like corporations are using it, because it's like, oh, if people can make money off of another artist's work, is that the same as taking some pennies out of that artist's wallet without letting them know? So it's a whole thing. And then of course, when it comes to things that aren't art, but more like, just like a word generator, right? Then it's been trained on a lot of people's writings. It's been trained on a lot of the internet, which of course, dealing with the legality of it all, you have social media, like big companies, like Meta, like Google, being like, hey, anything you post on social media, it's free game. And then content creators being like, what? So it's kind of an interesting bag of worms, because if you take money aside, if it's not a big corporation using it, it can be pretty interesting, especially from a DMing perspective, right? Where you're like, oh, maybe I have certain strengths. I'm really good at coming up with a plot of a story, the major beats and stuff. I can come up with a few different NPCs who like are really driving and like dramatic characters. I can also come up with a few traps that are really good, but like I want to flesh out the story more with other traps. Maybe I'm not great at creating monsters because I overthink it. Maybe, on and on and on. AI becomes interesting just from an average Joe Schmo perspective, because you're like, oh, I can round out some of my weaknesses, right? Now we're not going to talk about the environmental aspect of like, oh, even Joe Schmo, him generating like, oh, come up with a quest, that has that takes an hour or so, and suddenly, the servers running the AI and stuff is just like takes a lot of energy that affects the environment. So we're not talking about that, guys. Yeah. Okay, we're not talking about it because it gets to be too much.
It's above our pay grade.
It's above our pay grade. But just keeping in mind the whole thing about like, oh, AI is trained on other people's works. And so maybe, corporations using it, dubious ethically. Can you use it personally? Should you use it personally? Are there ways that it could help you? Are there ways where it falls short? And that's kind of what we're talking about today. And like best practices with it, ways that we find it useful. And yeah, anyway, Justin, I've talked for a while.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
No, yeah. I honestly don't think I'm smart enough necessarily to fully give the audience their opinion, which you shouldn't just take your opinion from people. You should, form your own opinion. But
yep.
I think in terms of ethicality and legality, obviously legality, I think that's pretty simple, right? Don't do anything illegal, find out what is or isn't illegal, and then stay within the bounds. That includes copyright law, that includes plagiarism. I think things get muddled when you talk about ethics. And I think at the heart of it, everyone's going to view it in terms of their perspective and their position, right? Yeah. The people who I've heard talk most strongly against AI image generators are artists. My sister is one, and me saying AI, she kind of, her hackles raise a little bit because I think she feels it. And I can sympathize with that. My father-in-law, he was like, dude, SEO's dead and AI killed it. And my hackles raised because I've heard that so many times. And, it's I think it's also a difficult conversation, because at its heart, there's this very powerful thing we have, right? Um, it feels more alive than fire, and it
Yeah.
feels, more friendly than fire, but I feel like it's no less destructive. And fire, I mean, that's not the right analogy, but over time, technology has outdated people, right? The carriage driver does not really have a job except around like Central Park or, towns that, there's like a need for that. Torches, same thing, that they're still here, but we use them more for fun rather than use. And I think AI scares a lot of people because of that same feeling. Um, but that's just sort of my opinion, or not my opinions. That's my view on AI a little bit overall. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone in your corner as a dungeon master? Maybe having someone who can help you find solutions to your DMing problems and help you improve every aspect of your game. Maybe someone who has a pretty good Al Pacino impersonation from his part in Any Given Sunday. Well, here at How to Be a Better DM, we are doing an experiment. We are offering 5 free coaching sessions to separate listeners of the show. During these coaching sessions, we'll work with you through your strengths and weaknesses as a DM to help you generate a game plan to make both better. You can either send in a recording of one of your games, or we'll attend it live if able. If all else fails, we can still chat about what you struggle with and talk with you through any prep you've done for your upcoming games to help you be better. If you're interested for one of these 5 free coaching sessions, go to sessionzerostudios.com/coaching and sign up. As it comes to being a dungeon master, our channel, obviously, we're not opposed to using AI tools, right? We have partnered with Worldsmith because we think that it can save dungeon masters a lot of time. And for me, that's one of the goals of our podcast. We want dungeon mastering for the listener of this show to be easier, more fun, and more stress-free without taking up a lot of extra time, because, we all have things to do. Not everyone has an open schedule, a filled wallet, and just stress-free days, right? I doubt anyone has that, but AI can really be a powerful tool in taking some of that load off of your back and really allowing you to enjoy D&D again if you're in a place where, dang, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, and to your point, I think like talking about the ethicality, like I think that it's important to be realistic with yourself and be like, okay, is it me being lazy, or is it me just trying to like, have I realized my limits, so to speak, right? And during this discussion, during our whole discussion about AI and and DMing and like if you should or shouldn't use it kind of thing, just realizing it's like, hey, it's here to stay, for better or worse, probably for the worse in a few ways, but more convenient in a few other ways. So then the question is like, okay, how can you use it in a realistic way that doesn't dumb down your own DMing, but like sharpen some of the areas where you weren't going to sharpen it anyway, your own DMing style.
Exactly.
So, I mean, let's just talk about best practices as a DM. Let's say that you're like, okay, the AI is here to stay. I'm not going to use it in these few different ways that I really don't want to, but maybe I could use it for DMing. Could it save me some effort, make session prep easier, whatever, right? Let's talk about best practices. I think just launching into it, don't neglect your other skills, make sure that, because I think a worry that a lot of people talk about, especially people who are trying, more of an artist mindset, not like literal art, but, creation mindset.
Yes.
The worry is like, hey, if people rely on AI, do we just get to the point where people don't have the skills to, to write their own adventure, to write their own NPCs, to, if every character sheet is auto-generated, do people stop knowing how to build their own characters, right? So it's like, hey, as a DM, If there's something you're good at and it's something you've worked hard at, keep up with that. Don't don't turn to it if you've already got a great thing going. And if there's something else that you're like, you know what, I would actually like to learn that skill for myself, like map drawing, right? There are ways to generate maps, like Worldsmith. They have a map generator, and it's solid, right? And there's a lot of others out there. But what if you're like, you know what, I could use these, but I'd also just like to learn how to draw my own maps on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper or something, right? Don't neglect skill development because of AI, right?
I think for me, that is the most important thing to remember with artificial intelligence. Also, I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge some of the people that jumped in and are watching. So Jay Tay and Juka, thanks for stopping by and joining our conversation. We really appreciate it. But as I said, my father-in-law, he's been really into AI. He's been out of work for some time. Like Phil, he just got a job, but
Good.
he's in being out of work, he's been trying to reskill and dove deep into AI, and he's kind of gotten me on the bandwagon a little bit.
Hmm.
And it's such a seductive thing to use because you get things so fast and so easily. But just like you said, Tanner, if you do that for years and then take a second look up, you realize that you have lost so many important skills that you loved doing in the meantime. And I think that's one reason why you have to remember dungeon mastering is a skill-based hobby. Most hobbies are skill-based, right? But this is a very complex one because it involves people management, it involves acting and role playing, it involves storytelling, it involves game design. Even just kind of basic human principles, being a leader, being decisionful, deciding,
Decisive.
decisive. Thank you.
Yeah.
I knew there was a word. Finding words that mean things in real life rather than just words you make up, right? All these skills, you don't want to outsource them because, I mean, the image that comes to my mind is Wally, right? And I already mentioned
Yeah.
that. We don't want to end up outsourcing everything and be either stuck with we don't need to exist and we have no purpose and there's nothing hard and we're just kind of these blobs, or the things that we've outsourced everything to also realize they don't need us, and they just get rid of us again. iRobot, like two sides of the same coin here. So one example of how I did this recently is I've been working on um, uh, reworking a one shot that I had. I don't know if you ever played with. I think you did. It was the one where they were on like that prison on that iceberg.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've been trying to rework that, and I was like having such troubles, and I posed it to ChatGPT, right? And I literally was like, "Here's the situation. I'm working on this one shot. I want to improve it. I have this and this going. I'm thinking that this area isn't really working. What do you think?" And it was so helpful because ChatGPT was able to be like, actually, I think this particular thing does work, but if you want, you could try these other two things. And then I responded and said, yeah, okay, I like that second option, but what if I did this and expanded it even more? And then it was like having a real conversation, kind of like you and I did in college in a writing group. I found that incredibly helpful because it was me thinking through the one shot and kind of going down these rabbit holes and getting something else's perspective. And there were instances where I would bring up problems to it that it wasn't realizing, but then it would incorporate those problems and like kind of help me work through them. And I really liked that as an example because in that instance, I wasn't necessarily offloading the work, right? I was using it to kind of just be a sounding board for what I was trying to do. And most of kind of the way that one shot is going has come from my brain because I didn't ask AI to suggest anything or to, write the ending. I was just asking for its opinion and saying, I don't think this works. What do you think? Kind of an idea. And I think that's a very important point to use with AI is you need to be aware of your prompts and what they're going to result.
Yeah, it's a great point because I think one of I work in content creation. I do a lot of, I've written a lot of articles and done a lot of social posts and stuff for my company and stuff. But because of that, like our team, we had a discussion about AI because our boss, he's not into that, but he's not into content creation. But he's like, could you guys use AI to like help you with anything? And I'm a pretty chill guy, but my coworker, she's like really into writing. She's like takes it very seriously, and she was like almost having a visceral reaction. She was like, no, and I understand why, because it's like, yeah, it's especially in terms of writing, it's a dark future where it's like, yeah, so what if the writing is technically good if there was no heart behind it, if there was no real intention, right? But the thing is, I found other ways where it's been very useful, which is like getting me into more of an analytical mindset, you know? Like there are some, like for example, Justin and I, when we're talking about the future of the podcast, when we're talking about plans for the future, and like, what kind of content could we create? What kind of endeavors would our audience find interesting, matched with the mission? Like, we know what the mission of our podcast is. How do we develop that? Because neither of us are, business majors. Neither of us are podcast majors either. But see what we're doing. But it is something where Justin put it into Chat GPT, and it kind of broke it down in a way that I was like, oh yeah, this isn't insane. This isn't something I could never do on my own. It would take a lot of time, and it's not something I'm personally interested in. And being like, oh hey, here's our month to month goals. And I think that like that's something where as a DM I'm interested in pursuing, which is like, oh, I have a plan to start a campaign. I know what I want to do for the campaign, but I know that I've got to do some prep. Me, in my slightly ADHD like mind, gets overwhelmed with just the thought, and I get distracted and stuff like that, right? But like just putting in something like that, it's almost like having someone. Here's the ironic thing: like the thing that I find most interesting about ChatGPT/AI in general is just something that I would probably get if I just had like a much closer confidant, someone just to bounce ideas off of. But like that's the nice thing. It's like, yeah, I know that we all live very separated lives now. We don't always have friends who have the same interests. And even if we did, we have to explain a lot of background and stuff. And that's worth doing. If you can do that, do that. But if you don't, be like, hey, I want to start a campaign in 3 months or 2 months or 1 month, right? What are the steps for creating and launching a campaign and getting my friends involved? And it could create a nice little to-do list.
Yeah.
That's something that, at least for me, where the first 2 steps of any endeavor are the hardest for me, it can make that first step a lot easier.
Absolutely. I think obviously one of the easiest ways, and honestly, we're coming down to end of time, and we didn't get to a lot of this. So I think this will be my last bit that I share, and then we'll close out, and then we'll get to our patron only content. So those of you who are listening live, you get some patron only content for free. You obviously have good taste. I mean, you listen to How to Be a Better DM, after all. We thank you so much for your support. And if you've ever gotten anything useful from How to Be a Better DM, take a minute and rate us and review us on your podcast listening app of choice. It goes a very long way to helping our show help many more dungeon masters out there who are just like you. If you love our content, help others become better dungeon masters too. But obviously, AI is really good for random generators, right? Random tables, things like that. As far as I go, with AI, you need to think of what it's making you become, right? And what the cost is, because everything has a cost. When you give something away, you don't get to do that thing. And that doesn't get to change you and affect you. So with, I have on my personal professional ChatGPT or whatever, I pay for the subscription. I've created 2 custom GPTs for How to Be a Better DM. One I call Session Zero Studios Professor, SOS Professor. And I've given it explicit instructions not to rewrite anything I put in. And sometimes it'll try to, and I'll tell it, don't tell me how to write this. Tell me what's wrong with it and point out sentences that are like you think aren't good so I can write them, right? So I can learn how to be a better writer. And I did that specifically because of what I want to become, right? I'm using ChatGPT to teach me how to be a better writer. And maybe it's not going to write the best stuff, right? Because hallucinations exist. But I'm pretty sure that it's actually going to help me write better than I write. The other one is actually the marketing minion for how to be a better DM, and that's what I call it. That one is allowed to write stuff, right? I've created those two separate things with very intentional purposes because I know how to market. I'm simply using this to speed things up because I want to get to other things like writing content, like building worlds, doing more podcasts. That's what I want to do more of. In your D&D, in my D&D, I don't like using AI to write out my entire sessions because I don't want to get bad at that. I don't want to give that away. There have been moments where I'll use ChatGPT in the middle of a session because I don't know what else to do. And I think looking back, I think that might be a crutch, honestly, for me personally, because the more you do that, the less likely you're going to do the opposite and just try and figure it out on your own, right? So again, with AI, I think the last thing I'm going to say is you need to be conscious of the cost and what you're giving away and what you do is changing you or how it's changing you and what you're becoming. So that's all I'm going to say to that.
Yeah, and as a final note for me, I think realizing what you lose from skipping the journey is an important part of it. But then counterpoint to that is like realize the parts of the journey you never wanted to enjoy. You know, like it's like I said, the first like step or two of any task for me is usually the one that I spend far too much time overthinking. But then once I'm on my way, I'm like, oh, I'm working towards creating that campaign. I'm working towards, redesigning that room in my house, whatever it is. Like getting some help is great. But at the same time, I could probably have a healthier relationship with like a good mentor, So like it is something to keep in mind where I'm like, yeah, I think we'll all have to get used to, and we'll get plenty used to AI just showing up in different parts. Like all of us are already somewhat using it, even if you don't think about it, when every time you Google search something, right?
Yeah.
Even if you cross-check what they have there against the sites that they recommend, in the end, it's going to become super normal that way. It's going to probably become normal in a few other ways. We're going to definitely see a lot more AI art. And that's certainly going to be true of, for when some of the players in your sessions, they might create a character portrait using AI art, you might be tempted to generate a map or two, or more, whatever it is. Just think about like, hey, looking into the future, what would I like to feel comfortable creating on my own? And what do I not care enough to actually develop the skill out? Because like you said, there are some things today that people back in the day knew how to do themselves, but we have no idea how, right? Have I ever
Writing cursive, right?
Hey, I can kind of do it. Not many people can read it, but I can do it. But like I can't. I've never like killed and cooked a chicken, and I don't typically miss it. But there are times I'm like, man, I bet if I cooked my own chicken more often, I'd probably enjoy it and be able to like feel extra proud about it. And so keep that in mind throughout the DMing. Like, what parts do you think you'd feel proud of? Is it setting descriptions? Is it that map that you learned how to make on your own? Is it NPCs that you've created and stat blocks? Whatever it is, hold on to that. Keep working on that. For other stuff, I'm not going to say use AI, but it's a tool out there if you did want to use it.
Yeah. And actually, I'm going to give the audience a challenge. If you are completely uncomfortable using AI, like you will never do it, I challenge you to do it just a little bit. And if you use AI maybe too much, or in those moments where you would be uncomfortable if you didn't use AI, I challenge you not to use it. I think testing the bounds and then making an intentional decision is really the most important thing you can do here, because then you're being a decisive human being. But thank you for listening to today's show. Thank you to you all who hopped in and listened live, JT, Juka, and Straw. Again, in a second, we're going to get to our patron-only content. But I also want to give a special thank you to Juka, TechSenpai, and TJ Maxx, who are our Discord moderators. And you guys have literally changed our Discord server for the better forever. And we are so very grateful to you guys for that. And just really, you guys are awesome, and we're happy to have you with us.
Yeah, and getting back to my original point about like, oh, AI can do stuff for you, but relationships do more.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's like us just trying to like do everything ourselves on the Discord where we're very novice, and we're trying to do the podcast too and stuff and everything else. Those three coming in and like there's a breath of fresh air, and we really appreciate that because like in the end, collaboration is something I've really valued about this podcast in general. So especially where this is very new, I just want to shout them out for making that great.
Exactly. We also wanted to say thank you to Foxy Beard, who is our one and only patron currently. Thank you so much, and thanks for putting your trust in us. It's a big, big leap of faith, but we're hoping to fulfill your trust and give back more. But that's all we have for you today. Thank you for listening to our show. We'll be back next time with another handcrafted episode just for you. Until then, let's go ahead and roll initiative. Brought to you by Session Zero Studios. For more information, visit sessionzerostudios.com.